7 days. 7 days is what we have been given to play, stress test, and uncover everything we can within a pre-early access build of Gray Zone Warfare. And after around 20 hours in the game across multiple days, I think I'm ready to give you guys a full in-depth breakdown of what Gray Zone Warfare is, what it isn't, and what it needs to grow into the game we all want it to be. This playtest has been polarizing, to say the least. Tons of community posts and Discord messages from the general public angry that content creators got to play first before they did, throwing hate towards the developers, the streamers themselves, people getting banned, timed out. While on the other hand, I've been watching content creators move past the honeymoon phase of the game in real time, which is what I thought was going to happen when I played the game about a month ago. Let's start with what Gray Zone Warfare isn't. This game isn't a Tarkov killer, nor is it a Tarkov clone like many angry gamers have been spamming everywhere they fucking can during this playtest. I think that Friendly Guy said it best when he said this.
So if someone makes a football game, does everyone just go, oh, it's just trying to rip off FIFA? No. If you have 3 sandwich stores and the first one that was there, and you have multiple sandwich stores open around it, you always go to all those guys and go, nah, they're all just copying the first sandwich shop that opened up down the road. They're the shit. It looks the exact same. Well, no fucking shit. It's a sandwich. It's gonna look the fucking same. It's gonna act the same. It's gonna taste the same. But it's not them. It'll have its unique differences to the first fucking sandwich shop that opened. It's not their fault they were the first. It's not Taco's fault they were the first that did the extraction style with the menus, like where you could put like headphones and helmets and guns and upgrade and stuff. They were the first to do it, and everyone after that will do their iteration of it.
And it's true. Gray Zone Warfare is clearly inspired by Escape from Tarkov when it comes to things like their UI, inventory management, things like traders and quests. The gameplay loop shares a lot of similarities to Tarkov, which in my opinion is a good thing because I think that's what keeps a lot of people coming back to the game. Tarkov has set the bar and is one of the first games in this genre to gather popularity and do a lot of these things right. What Gray Zone isn't is a copy-paste of other games, but Gray Zone is an open-world, faction-based, multiplayer, PvEVP tactical FPS with a huge emphasis on PvE against AI. The game has elements of survival, elements of extraction, and elements of RPGs that all culminate into a single game that, in my opinion, does a lot of things right while also creating a lot of issues with their overall gameplay loop when you start to magnify, zoom in, and look at singular mechanics. This game's gunplay reminds me a lot of Ground Branch, which is another tactical FPS that has done a lot of great things over the years, but Gray Zone has streamlined that gameplay just a little bit more. The world and the environments remind me a lot of Ghost Recon Wildlands or even Far Cry or Crysis, with these lush green forests and open landscapes with mountains off in the distance and almost a strange like Vietnam feel to it, especially when you're flying from LZ to LZ on these choppers. The sense of scale that you feel when doing this, it's just awesome. Speaking of helicopters, they're the most viable way to traverse this map. You click an LZ, a chopper picks you up and it takes you there. The problem is, once you're on the helicopter, you're locked in position and you can't do a goddamn thing. Meaning if some team is camping the LZ that you're landing at, well, you're fucked. Let us shoot off the fucking helicopters. When I brought up the issue of LZ camping to the devs in the first little playtest we did a few weeks ago, the answer I got was, well, you can walk instead. Fuck that. That is a terrible response to one of the biggest issues we're running into right now. And keep in mind, this is a content creator test where we all kind of understand the assignment. We're not going to do that often to avoid those toxic confrontations. We're all kind of like this weird, like, colleague / co-workers in this test. Wait until the scum and villainy get into this game and literally sit at every LZ and wait for you to get off the helicopter. It's going to make this entire system fucking useless. So why even have it in the game if you're going to hamstring players that badly?
Oh, there's people here. Right below us. Come on, man. Are you really?
It needs to be reworked and fixed before this goes out to the general public. And if you guys are just planning on making players walk if you want to avoid this problem, the map is 42 square kilometers. There are points of interest, but there is a lot of empty space, which then goes into my next issue with the game, which is all of this empty space that we're seeing. You know, when you're playing a game like Ghost Recon Wildlands or Far Cry, you're constantly running into things like patrols, outposts, and things that are just in the middle of the forest. You know, open world games, they always say, like, if you're running for longer than 45 to 50 seconds, players are going to eventually get bored. This game doesn't really have it outside of, you know, the distinct points of interest like the villages or the military base or the bunkers that are marked on the map. Everything else is empty. There's trees, there's open paddy fields, and that is fucking it. If you want us to walk to our objectives, which are miles and miles away, that's great. Give us something to do in the meantime while we're getting there. Make the world feel like it's actually open, viable, and living instead of just the points of interest that our quests are wanting us to go. The gameplay loop is designed around taking these helicopters to the LZs to get us into the action, and your lack of response for combating LZ camping isn't the way. I want to discuss the 3 factions within the game. So you have the Crimson Shield, you have Mithras, and you have the Lemang Recovery Initiative. You are prompted to join one of these 3 factions when you create your character, and this is a huge choice because you aren't allowed to play with members of other factions, so your friends need to all make that choice together if you want to play with them. As of right now, there is 0 difference between factions. The starter areas are a bit different, but not much. The gear is all identical to one another, which makes visual recognition of your enemies damn near impossible without opening up the map and verifying if whoever is in front of you is on your team, is a blueberry, and a part of your faction. All of the traders and the vendors are identical. The gear you unlock is identical. Right now, there is 0 difference, which makes 0 sense to me. The idea of separating players isn't a new thing either. I always think back to World of Warcraft with Horde and Alliance. The thing is, there are so many differences from quest lines to territories themselves to gear sets, races, and classes being limited behind factions. But even looking at WoW's trajectory, they've realized that separating friends and players isn't the best move, and throughout the years have slowly integrated cross-faction gaming. I don't have a lot of faith in the faction system here until we can start to see real differences between them. Some ideas that I've had were to lock certain gear behind factions while creating a black market vendor, which would essentially be the flea market equivalent in Tarkov, but would mean so much more if the only way you could get certain weapons is either killing a player and picking it up off their body, or going to that black market and getting those blacklisted weapons that aren't available in your faction, but would require trade and interaction with those other players. One of the biggest missed opportunities for factions kind of goes into my next feature, which is the 42 kilometer square map itself. Now, this map is fucking gorgeous, by the way. I've been in situations where players are fighting close to the Mithras air base, the military bunker southeast of the map, and even places up north. Why not make these territories something you can capture and keep a hold of, which then sends resources back to your faction in the way of maybe giving us better discounts at vendors or even special gear that players can receive the more territories they hold. The lore of this game is that these factions are here to excavate and dig for resources on this island after a disaster has happened. Giving us these kind of mechanics not only makes us want to explore and travel and go to these points of interest, but it's 3-pronged. We also get rewarded for engaging with the AI at these places and potentially other players who are also trying to control that area, and it gives us a reason to cheer for our side and fight for our faction. That feeling that Helldivers gives you when you're liberating territory for Super Earth can be replicated here, and I do think ignoring that is a huge misstep, both for lore and gameplay purposes. And I hope that that's something the developers consider in the future. We need more reasons to want to be a part of these factions. Now, going back to the map itself, it's a huge fucking map. There are plenty of points of interest already that players have been exploring, and I generally don't really have an issue with what I'm seeing so far. Environments are lush and beautifully rendered. Houses are propagated with tons of stuff around. The villages and the points of interest are some of the best that I've seen in gaming. And I love the vibe that the game is giving. It's Unreal Engine 5, and you can tell when you look around. Visually, I don't even think I need to say anything. You guys have eyes, and if you're blind, just touch the screen a little bit, and I still think you'd be able to tell how beautiful this game is. It's fucking gorgeous, but with that comes a lot of optimization issues that they are currently working on, and I think they're going to nail in the future. But come early access day one launch, don't be surprised if there are a lot of reports of people not able to run the game at solid, stable frame rates. Now, seeing as this is a persistent server, when you die, it isn't like Tarkov. There's no raid reset, there's no extraction. You spawn back at base and are able to either re-kit up right then and there, or you can take a helicopter, head right back to the closest LZ, get to your body, and just pick up all your shit. This is one of those things that separates itself from Tarkov. When you die in Tarkov, it's devastating. Your team has to pick up what they can from you. They have to get to the closest extract, get back to lobby, regroup up, and then drop all your stuff in the next raid, and just hopefully all of those things work out. It's devastating. And when I'm playing Tarkov, it deflates the mood so badly when somebody on your team dies. Whereas with this, it's actually not too bad. It's a little shitty. It's like, oh, fuck, yeah, I got shot. All right, hold on. I'll get right back there. And you're back in the action within 5 to maybe 10 minutes if you're super slow about it. And this is one of those things where you can keep the action going, which is a great thing. But in doing so, you lose all sense of fear, that gear fear, that intensity that every moment can be your last, kind of gets deflated when you can see people just run right back to their body. When you're in a firefight and you take out a team, you got to be quick, because chances are within the next 5 minutes, they're going to be back there trying to grab their shit, and they might be able to grab it and then just continue fighting. All sense of urgency, all sense of intensity kind of gets taken out of the game a bit. And in the beginning, I was a fan of being able to just go back to your corpse and continue playing. In the PvE sense, I think that's pretty cool, because you're just fighting AI, you're completing quests, and that's actually really fun. When you start to get into PvP, it starts to feel a little cheap. You kill a couple enemies on another faction, and it didn't move the needle. It didn't do anything for you. It didn't do anything for your faction. Sure, you could pick up their gear, but that kind of goes into the next thing. The looting in this game is kind of shit. And this is a multi-problem issue. Right now, there aren't a lot of guns in the game. There's a couple different AK variants, a couple different AR variants. I think there's one shotgun, a sniper. There's a couple of SMGs, little like Scorpion, like Uzi things. And that's really about it. In the early stages of the game, backpacks aren't that big, so you aren't sitting there doing much Tetris stacking, trying to get the best loot, because all of it is pretty lackluster. They have the systems in place to have loot, create loot, populated around the world, either in containers and backpacks or just loose on shelves. But because we're in an early state, there's just not a lot of loot. I joke about looting horse statues in Tarkov and how stupid that is, but at least it's more interesting than finding your 15th water bottle and 10th chocolate bar in between yet another AKM with 2 mags. It's borderline boring to loot, and I would say at this point there's zero incentive to do so unless you're out there starving or dying of thirst. But it's one of those things where I know it's early, we're not even in early access yet, and I know that stuff's going to come with time, and that makes me excited because all of the systems here work. I'm just excited for when the update comes that, okay, we have a new point of interest, there's new loot to grab, there's new items, there's new guns, there's new I'm excited to follow along with that process. But as of right now, there's not a lot keeping you there. Karma Cut, who is another tactical milsim content creator, he said on Twitter that the tech and art is extremely impressive, but the game feels like it has an identity crisis or is trying to do too much. I feel like they could make an amazing PvE experience or an amazing PvP experience, but this middle ground the game currently sits in leads to less than optimal gameplay loops for both. I wouldn't say it has an identity crisis per se, but when I look at Gray Zone Warfare as a whole, I still don't see the long-term vision of what this game looks like at a 1.0 state. Now, the lead developer, Merrick, actually responded to this post from Karma, in which he said that it is obviously early access and the game is huge already, and we built this entire world within 1 year. Of course, there's going to be problems, disbalance, exploits, etc. There's missing 70% of the design, but that is nothing we cannot improve over time, and that's why they're doing early access. And I mean, it's a fair response, but I think that part about missing 70% of the design is why I'm still struggling to see where this game is going to be 2 or 3 years from now. But with all of that said, there is something pulling me to this game like I have never seen in the FPS space, at least for a long fucking time. Jumping in, fucking around, either running quests or just going exploring, playing with the boys, and it all working outside of, you know, certain desync and certain issues with the AI that we've brought up before that the developers are clearly aware of and trying to get fixed. There's something about this game that keeps me just always thinking about it during these last 4 days. I would stream for, you know, 5, 4, 3 hours, and then I would log off and just constantly be thinking about playing more. And you don't get that from me that often. There is something here, and what I think it is that vast amount of potential. And if you are a fan of the channel, you know I fucking hate the word potential, and I hate selling or buying games off of that potential. What the game features is 150 quests, 3 factions, a visual style and standard that we haven't seen in the tactical space before, and a game that has a lot of confusing missing pieces, but a dev team that is so fucking passionate and transparent and communicative that I want to be along for this ride. This is one of those games that comes around once in a blue moon. I think Tarkov was one of those games, and I think Gray Zone Warfare is one of those games as well. You can look around the landscape and you can look at all the different content creators that are chiming in and giving their thoughts on it, and all of them are bringing up the issues, but most of them are having fun still and enjoying what there is to enjoy, which is something you don't get a lot of. Usually a lot of these games come out and they fucking die on arrival because of reasons A, B, or C. Usually it has to do with the gameplay loop. Usually it has to do with either server issues or just the lack of progression, the lack of really anything to do in these games. This game has a gameplay loop that I know can be fleshed out further with things like more loot, like more quests, more points of interest, better AI, different types of AI, more guns, more all of this stuff. I think Gray Zone Warfare is in a position where they have one of the most solid early access foundational builds that we have seen on this channel in years. And all they have to do now is execute and keep bringing content in a timely fashion. What I don't want to see is an 8-year development cycle like we've gotten with Tarkov, and we're still nowhere close to the finish line because it takes them 1.5 years to add a map. What I don't want to see is another indie tactical FPS that is in development hell for a decade because they don't have the resources to get it done. What I think is going to happen is Gray Zone Warfare is going to come out within the next 30 days into early access. And again, I don't have any insider knowledge of this. This is just what I'm thinking based on what we've all played and the reception to the game on social media. People are excited. Even what they're seeing here, there are a lot of missing pieces. There are a lot of questions, but the excitement around this game is something that I haven't seen in a long time. My guess is this goes out within the next 30 days. And when it does, people are going to be jumping in, finding all of these issues, badgering the fucking developers as much as humanly possible, and then we're just going to have to watch them work through these issues as a community. And that's exactly why what I said in my first video when we did the small little content creator test about 3 weeks ago, I said that this game will eventually be what a lot of people are looking for in the tactical space as a viable alternative to other games. But it's not going to be that game day one early access, because there's still so many things that they have to figure out with the gameplay that they have designed that they need to be able to work through, and they need to be able to test that in a larger environment. And once this goes to early access, the feedback that they're going to receive is going to be overwhelming, and it's going to reflect almost everything that I have said in this video as a whole, from LZ camping to imbalance to factions to all of the things that we have talked about. It's going to hit them tenfold when the general public gets into it, and it kind of wraps up the rest of this video from where we started. Everybody has been clamoring to get into this game, and I get it. It's frustrating when content creators get to jump in and test the game before the general public. As a developer, this is the best way to start to open the floodgates before letting them wide open, because the issues that we're running into now, we're going to make content, we're going to talk about it, we're going to communicate with the developers. When you open this up to the general public and somebody gets killed off of a helicopter LZ 4 or 5 times in a row, they're going to go to Twitter or the community hub or their Discord, and they're going to call the developers fucking idiots, incel, whatever the fuck they're going to throw out there. And it's going to be tenfold on top of a few content creators making videos. And so all I would say is, if you're one of those people that are frustrated that content creators got into it first, think of where we're at as like the internet gamer community and realize why that might not have been the best thing, and why this is the move to allow them to start seeing their game be played in a more open area without opening themselves up to the absolute amount of shit that they're going to get come launch. I'm genuinely excited for the future of this game, and I hope that these guys keep their heads up, because they're going to be getting a shit ton of feedback, because the excitement and the interest for this game is so high that, well, all I'm just going to say is, I'm going to warn you, it's going to be overwhelming. But I think that this is the dev team that is going to be able to pull off something incredible in the tactical FPS space. And I'm sitting here with all of these issues aside, I am wishing them the absolute best, because I have had a fucking blast. All these issues aside, I have had a blast playing this game with my friends, and they have something here that I haven't experienced in a long time. Let me know what you guys think of Gray Zone Warfare down below in the comments. While you're down there, leave a like on the video, subscribe for more content. Make sure you guys are checking me out over on Twitch. That's where I'm streaming now, because YouTube streaming fucking sucks. My name is Big Fry. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in the Gray Zone.